Hello and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, Israeli and Palestinian leaders react to the Paris Peace Conference. Israel foils a record number of smuggling attempts to the Gaza Strip, and an incredible historical discovery provides an inside look at the life of the Holocaust victim Anne Frank. I'm Natasha Kirchuk here with the latest news in Israel. Leaders across Israel are finally celebrating about the Paris Peace Conference, and it's all because of the, quote, weakened text of the summit's final joint declaration. The day-long summit came to a finish yesterday evening, with a statement calling on Israel and the Palestinians to refrain from one-sided actions in their path towards peace.
L'initiative que la France a lancée et à laquelle vous avez pleinement adhéré, c'était d'abord une alerte, car la solution des deux États, celle sur laquelle la communauté internationale s'était retrouvée depuis plusieurs années, apparaît menacée. Elle l'est physiquement sur le terrain, par l'accélération de la colonisation, elle l'est politiquement, par l'affaiblissement progressif du camp de la paix, elle l'est moralement, par la méfiance qui s'accumule entre les parties et bien sûr qu'exploitent les extrémistes.
The declaration not only urged the two sides to restate their commitment to a two-state solution, but also to disassociate from voices that reject that goal. Israel has continued to dismiss the conference as a trivial and ineffective means of bringing about peace with the Palestinians.
Well, this conference is really a futile conference, and it's one which is going to push peace further back. It's a little bit like marriage counseling with neither the husband nor the wife present, but 75 diplomats from around the world trying to solve a complex and rather intimate conflict.
But Israeli officials are at least happy that the summit's final declaration excluded passages condemning the Israeli settlement enterprise, which were included in the recent UN Security Resolution 2334.
Je sais ce que l'on a dit de cette conférence, qu'elle pourrait être une naïveté. Comment imaginer parler de la paix aujourd'hui quand la guerre déchire une grande partie du Moyen-Orient? On a dit même que ça pouvait être une futilité, presque un supplément d'âme que nous viendrions ici introduire dans les relations internationales. Je vous l'affirme ici. La naïveté, ce serait de croire que le rapprochement entre Israël et ses voisins, si nécessaire, serait possible sans avancer vers la paix entre Israéliens et Palestiniens.
70 different nations attended the Paris Peace Summit, which the French foreign minister claims was arranged to convey an international sense of urgency about the stalemate in the Israeli-Palestinian peace process. The Palestinian president says he's committed to a two-state solution and respects the summit's final declaration. But some Palestinian leaders say it won't make a difference.
As it turned out, this was just a proclamation of statements of intent, of commitment to the two-state solution. It was slightly watered down because of several interventions to try to avoid concrete mechanisms or deadlines.
The nations involved in this year's Paris Peace Conference are expected to meet again before the end of the year.
Plus de 20 ans après la signature des accords d'Oslo, chacun doit bien savoir quelle est la leçon que nous tirons de l'histoire. Chacun doit bien comprendre quel est l'enjeu et que rien ne peut être improvisé ou bouleversé. Il y a un effort qui a été engagé il y a des années. Il doit se poursuivre. Il est légitime, il est nécessaire que la communauté internationale réfléchissent sérieusement à la meilleure manière d'accompagner la solution des deux États.
While the Paris Middle East Conference was underway, a very vocal demonstration in support of the Jewish state was being held across town, outside the Israeli embassy. Aaron, why are so many people galvanized about this issue?
Well, the Prime Minister Netanyahu has said many times that, his opinion, the way to a lasting peace, the only way is through direct negotiations with zero preconditions. And so a lot of people who, especially the pro-Israel, crowd, are very wary of an imposed peace. And so I think a lot of them are out there voicing their concerns, and especially after the recent UN resolution.
About 300 people waved Israeli and French flags together in a visible show of solidarity. Here's what a few of them had to say about why they came out.
Nous sommes contre la conférence qui se tient aujourd'hui parce que cette conférence n'a aucun sens si ce n'est au contraire d'appuyer la décision qui s'est passée à l'UNESCO il y a quelque temps de cela. Israël et les Palestiniens feront la paix ensemble et ils n'ont pas besoin de qui que ce soit pour les aider. Parce qu'au contraire, au lieu de les aider, ça met des entraves et ça c'est absolument anormal.
Il y a un double langage de la France parce que j'entends dire François Hollande souvent dire que la résolution viendra d'une négociation directe. Et aujourd'hui, on fait une conférence où ni les Israéliens ni les Palestiniens sont présents. Donc je jure, je ne comprends pas à quoi ça sert. Donc maintenant, ça sert peut-être d'autres objectifs. Est-ce que c'est électoraux? Est-ce que c'est pour la sortie de M. Hollande pour l'avenir? Je ne sais pas. En tout cas, c'est une conférence qui ne sert à rien. Et nous, on est là pour témoigner notre solidarité envers l'État d'Israël.
France is home to both the largest Jewish and Muslim communities in Europe. National leaders have been saying over the past year that with so much uncertainty surrounding how the next U.S. administration will handle the issue, it's important to push the Israelis and Palestinians back to the negotiating table rather than allowing a fragile status quo to deteriorate.
What will be the ramifications of yesterday's Paris Middle East Peace Conference? The diplomatic correspondent of the Times of Israel tells ILTV's Steve Leibowitz that the message emerging from the international community was yes to a two-state solution and no to settlement expansion.
What the French government is saying is this conference is geared towards reaffirming the international community's support for a two-state solution, making clear to the Israeli government that A, they condemn settlement expansion, B, that the two-state solution is in danger, and 3, also showing Washington, the incoming administration, there is international consensus for a two-state solution and for the fact that nobody will recognize any changes to the 67 lines, any changes on the grounds that are not agreed upon by two parties.
So what are the ramifications, for example, in the United Nations? I know that Ambassador Danone was quite concerned and expressed that concern that the Paris conference can yield new initiatives in the UN and maybe in the UN Security Council.
Prime Minister Netanyahu has been quite openly threatening that possibility. Whatever text or final document is adopted at the end of the Paris conference could make it to the floor of the Security Council resolution. In 2 days from now, there is a meeting scheduled on the Middle East peace process. And somebody, Sweden, for example, which right now is the president of the Security Council, could propose that resolution, and then God knows what's going to happen. The Americans have said that they would veto any resolution that tries to impose any or to settle any final status issues. Jerusalem doesn't believe these promises, saying, well, you screwed us over the first time, we don't trust you anymore.
Do you sense that there's a rush on the part of the world to get whatever they want to accomplish accomplished before the 20th of January?
I think so, yeah. The world is uncertain about the Trump administration. Trump and his team have made it quite clear where they stand in the Israel-Palestinian conflict, and therefore the world is trying to push some kind of initiative, drawing the lines in the sign. This is where the international consensus is, and even though you seem to be more sympathetic to Israel, you have to know that you're not alone. The international community has a certain view, and you better take note of it.
Okay, great. Thanks very much for being with us at ILTV.
Thank you.
Another hot topic at the Paris conference was the incoming U.S. President Donald Trump's pledge to move the American embassy to Jerusalem. French Foreign Minister Jean-Marc Ayrault even concluded the summit by issuing a veiled warning to Trump. The French foreign minister stressed that every American leader has signed waivers preventing such a relocation since 1995, when Congress passed the Jerusalem Embassy Act demanding the U.S. diplomatic compound be moved to the Israeli capital. While Ayrault shied away from explicitly criticizing Trump's promise, he repeatedly referred to the proposed move as a provocation, while warning it would have serious consequences on the ground.
Le gouvernement américain précédent avait envisagé cette option. Et puis finalement, tous les présidents y ont renoncé. Quand je dis c'est une provocation, parce que ce serait, si j'ai bien compris, une décision unilatérale, alors que la question si sensible de Jérusalem ne peut être abordée que dans le cadre d'une négociation entre les parties. Et si à la fin il y a un accord général de paix et qui inclut une réponse sur la question de Jérusalem, qui soit une réponse équitable et juste, alors la question de l'emplacement des ambassades se posera dans d'autres termes pour les deux États. Mais le faire comme ça, c'est pour ça que je dis c'est quand même une provocation.
Despite Israeli objections that Jerusalem is its capital, the U.S. has based its embassy in Tel Aviv for the past 68 years. It looks like American involvement in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict will be shifting into the hands of an unlikely candidate, President-elect Donald Trump's Jewish son-in-law, Jared Kushner. Trump has just confirmed that he will be using Kushner to try to broker a peace deal between Israel and the Palestinians. The announcement comes just days after the controversial president-elect named the 36-year-old as a senior advisor in his upcoming administration, leading critics to accuse Trump of nepotism. The incoming leader says Kushner has been a, quote, tremendous advisor throughout his campaign and is proud that his son-in-law will have a key leadership role in his administration. Suicide is often a tragic consequence of mental disorders that have gone undiagnosed. Now, Israel's health ministry is rolling out a new plan to identify those most at risk of suicide and to help them before it's too late. About 500 Israelis kill themselves every year, and the ministry intends to lower that number as much as it possibly can. And for this expressed purpose, more than 130,000 caregivers will be trained in several specific departments, including welfare, education, and youth. The participants are set to include police officers, religious leaders, clerks at unemployment bureaus, social workers, and even judges. These gatekeepers will refer people experiencing suicidal tendencies for immediate treatment. They'll be working closely with personal physicians, educators, and even staff at baby clinics who recognize women struggling with severe postpartum depression. Plus, the gatekeepers will also focus on other at-risk communities such as new immigrants, the elderly, and LGBT members. This is all part of the national Israeli plan to combat suicide, which will also see the opening of more emergency hotlines, better treatment and monitoring of those suffering from anxiety and other problems, as well as increased public outreach to further raise awareness of the phenomenon, which can be critical in saving your loved ones' lives. Yet another report on Israel's security successes from 2016 has been released, this time indicating that the Israeli army was able to prevent 1,226 attempts to smuggle illicit goods into the Gaza Strip through the Kerem Shalom crossing. The number demonstrates a significant increase over the previous year. In 2016, an average of almost 500 trucks loaded with goods entered the Gaza Strip, a record amount. Israel maintains a strict list of what goods are allowed into the coastal enclave as a means of preventing the production of weapons, the digging of terror tunnels, and the planning of terror attacks. Goods like drones, scuba gear, and drilling equipment are among just some of the items that are not allowed into Gaza. Israel is well known for its top-of-the-line security, and if you're interested in becoming just like a skilled Israeli fighter yourself, there's a way. Joining us today is Krav Maga Grandmaster Kobi Lichtenstein and his son Yoav, a Krav Maga professor himself. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So, to begin, tell us first a little bit about what Krav Maga is.
Of course, Krav Maga, it's the self-defense technique, the system created by Emil Lichtenfeld in the 40s to give the possibility to anyone, regardless of gender, age, height, strength, anything, to be able to defend himself in the street. So it doesn't matter if you are attacked with a knife or with a stick or anything, you should be able to defend yourself and to go home safe.
So it's hand-to-hand combat, essentially.
It is. It is,
right.
in a kind of
And
way,
it's great for women who want to protect themselves.
Especially for women, for the elders, for everyone.
Everyone,
kids.
anyone
Yes,
who wants to defend themselves if they're ever
Exactly,
attacked
self-defense
should become a
is
Krav
for
Maga
everyone.
fighter. Exactly. So you guys are living in Brazil, in Rio. How did you guys end up bringing Krav Maga to Brazil and South America as a whole?
Yes, so Master Kobe, my father, he was a direct student from Emi. Emi is the man who created the Krav Maga. So he was a direct student from him for his whole life. And in the 1990s, he brought Krav Maga, especially with the blessing, of course, of Emi, to Brazil, to South America, to teach the whole people there how to defend themselves, because he saw that there they live with fear in the street. They walk and they kind of fear if they're going to be attacked or something. Sometimes we hear it and we see it on TV. So he saw that he could change their lives with Krav Maga.
Well, especially in places like Brazil, Rio has a very high crime rate. So, I mean, you really need to be able to defend yourself in case you are attacked or robbed, right? So not only in Brazil, this is generally South America. There's a lot more poverty. So.
Yes, it happens all over the world, actually. And sometimes we only see the bad things on TV. But yes, it's kind of dangerous some places, and you have to be able to defend yourself.
No, yeah, it's Argentinian. You learn about these things. You have to protect yourself more when you walk on the street. Things are a little, I would say, safer generally in the U.S., but I can imagine this being something really important to South Americans just as a whole. Now, what was the reaction from the people that you started to teach Krav Maga? How did Brazilians react to learning this new way of fighting?
It was actually very good. Very good. We may be surprised or not, because Krav Maga, it was the first, actually it is, the only self-defense technique recognized in the world. After Krav Maga was created by Emi, as I told you, like some other techniques started to teach also some self-defense techniques. Okay, so in Brazil it was the first self-defense technique, so people who wanted to defend themselves, and not be like a martial artist or a champion or win a medal, but just defend yourself in the street, went to look for Krav Maga.
Wow, it's really interesting. Now, you have started to bring Krav Maga delegations from South America to Israel, correct? How did you start doing that?
Yes, so we started it in 1994 when Emi was still alive. So we brought them here to train with the man who created the Krav Maga. Imagine, like, it's something. You train with the man who made everything you know about it. It's like, I don't know, learning physics from Newton or something like that. So we kept coming here every 2 years to train with him. But in 1998, he died. And we stopped for a while. And in 2011, we came back. So in 2011, 13, and so on, every 2 years, we bring them here to know a little bit more about Israel, to train here, to get to know the place of birth of Israel, of Krav Maga.
It's really interesting because you're not necessarily only bringing Jews, right, from South America to Israel. This is people from all different backgrounds.
The majority is not Jewish.
Right, so I mean, how do you think Krav Maga and bringing Krav Maga into the lives of non-Jews living in South America has affected their impression of Israel?
A lot. Like in all of our places we teach Krav Maga, there is a flag of Israel. We talk about Israel because we have nothing to hide. It's the place where Emi did it. It's the place where Emi lived. It's the place where Master Kobe lived, where he learned, where he taught in the beginning. So we bring them here to get to know more about Israel, not only what we see on the TV or maybe something that it's not really correct. So they can see with their own eyes what's really Israel.
Wow, it's beautiful. I mean, you guys have really brought an amazing face of Israel to South America, and it looks like you're headed down a very positive path. Well, thank you guys so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Have you ever dreamed of working in the startup nation? Well, now's your chance. The Israeli government just greenlighted the hiring of 500 high-tech workers from abroad. The $235 million initiative is aimed at bolstering the technology sector in what's affectionately referred to as the Silicon Wadi. The plan is geared at heading off what could be a severe shortage of local talent in the programming and internet fields. Organizers will also be encouraging even more Israelis to enroll in the high-tech academic programs and raise those numbers by at least 40% over the next 6 years. They're specifically hoping to attract more women, Arabs, and ultra-Orthodox Jews who are currently underrepresented in the industry. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is granting his own seal of approval to the proposal because he says the main challenge in the sector is having enough high-level manpower to meet the world's demand for Israeli technology. Plus, as an added incentive for those hoping to contribute their own brainpower to the effort, it turns out that the 500 techies outsourced from abroad will be paid at least twice the average going rate received by their Israeli colleagues. Israelis are celebrating across the country for a 17-year-old Israeli who just made history by racing his motorcycle across the sands of the Sahara to cross the finish line first as the youngest ever champion of the Africa Eco Race. Aaron, how could he have pulled something like this off? This is intense.
I have no clue. I mean, this is an incredible win. I think everybody's just really proud of him and his representing of the Jewish state. I don't want to go overstep my bounds, but I could have beat him.
You could have beat him. I think you'd have to work out a little bit more for that, Aaron.
No problem.
Let's check out your report.
Gev Tedisela succeeded in taking the lead early, which is no easy feat. The challenging course is 4,040 miles long and lasts for 12 days. The young Israeli triumphed over thousands of other rally drivers who competed in the annual event by pushing full throttle through the deserts of Morocco, Mauritania, and Senegal. Sela not only won 5 of the 12 stages, but he even remained at the head of the pack for most of the entire long-distance contest to finish a full 50 minutes ahead of its closest competitor. The world press is now raving about the Israeli prodigy who never competed on a desert track before. Sela says he never thought he would win and that he's still in disbelief over the victory. The Africa race kicked off in 2008, and part of its goals are to raise awareness about eco-responsibility and sustainable development. Israeli Sports and Culture Minister Miri Regev is congratulating the teenage champion for bringing pride and honor to the Jewish state. As soon as he gets home, she's going to award him personally with a special certificate of excellence.
There's been a stunning find at the notorious Sobibor Nazi death camp in Poland of a pendant historians believe may have once belonged to a Holocaust victim related to the famed Anne Frank. The very unique necklace is inscribed with the words Mazal Tov, which is Hebrew for good luck. The other side bears the Hebrew letter He, which is symbolic of the name God. There are also 3 stars of David and the birth date of the girl who once wore it around her neck. Archeologists discovered the jewelry at a site where Jewish victims were forced to disrobe before being forced to walk to their deaths in the gas chambers. Researchers say they believe it belonged to Caroline Cohen, who came from Frankfurt like her cousin Anne Frank, who also owned a similar pendant. They think the gift may have been part of a family tradition honored before the Second World War. It appears as though the jewelry wasn't looted by the Nazis because it seems to have dropped below the floorboards of the horrifying walkway, where it remained buried until being discovered this past autumn. One archaeologist from the Israeli Antiquities Authority says the moving story of Caroline Cohen is symbolic of the shared fate of the hundreds of thousands of Jews who were murdered in the extermination camps, and that it's important to tell her story so that we never forget. And now for our Hebrew word of the day. Earlier, we learned a little about the incredible self-defense style of Krav Maga, and that brings us to tonight's word, Maga, meaning touch or contact. Krav Maga literally translates to contact battle, but Maga alone is so much more than a way to escape an attack. There's Maga gufni, or physical contact, Kush Maga, meaning a sense of touch, and even Adashot Maga, or contact lenses. Just remember that you should often keep your hands to yourself. Breaking that social rule would be Luli Maga, or out of touch. Let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. You can expect tonight to be partly cloudy and windy with a low of 51 or 11 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow should be partly cloudy again with a rise in temperatures. The high will be 71 or 22 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.83 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. Thanks for watching and see you tonight.